These aren't just historical images. They are windows into moments of profound change, incredible resilience, and enduring cultural pride. Each portrait tells a story not just of an individual, but of a nation, a community, and a way of life facing an uncertain future. So, settle in as we explore these frozen moments in time. Our first image, from around 1905, shows Liy Ki Yates, daughter of a Lagona PBLO chief. She was photographed in the semi-arid west-central region of New Mexico near Albuquerque, her Kuwait. Attire with its distinctive belt and bead necklaces marks important ceremonial identities. This was a time when railroads were beginning to integrate markets and cultures, forever altering the landscape. An image from 1908, attributed to Roland Reed, shows a woman of the Ojibwa people. At the turn of the 20th century, Ojibwa communities lived among the Great Lakes, their lives defined by seasonal cycles of fishing and gathering, and renowned for their birch bark and beadwork arts. This photograph poignantly points to both cultural continuity and the encounter with the technical modernity of the time. Carl Wirtz's photograph, made in 1900 in Arizona, shows two young women by a window. Their rolled hairstyle is a beautiful indicator of their youth and specific social roles. At the turn of the century, villages on the mesas of the Colorado Plateau increasingly received artists, traders, and travelers. Their gazes seemed to follow that rapidly approaching world. An 1878 image taken at Fort Kiowa in the Montana Territory features a Cheyenne woman. The fort was established after the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876 under Nelson Miles's campaign, anchoring the Army's expanding presence on the plains. In this challenging setting, the Cheyenne and Algonquian-speaking people, allied with the Lakota and Arapaho, faced displacement and fought to maintain their traditions. This scene presents Carlawa, Chiwi and her daughters, Maria and Felicitura, women of Isleta Pueblo. Made in the early 20th century and attributed to Poli, it is set in the U.S. Southwest when New Mexico was transitioning from a territory to statehood in 1912. The framing lovingly highlights kinship and the central female presence in Kiowa community. Here is an image of a young Hopi woman from Sikomovi on First Mesa, Arizona, made by Frederick Monson in the first decades of the 20th century. The girls wear magnificent ceremonial attire tied to the agricultural cycle and village celebrations. The scene is set in a period of immense change in the Southwest, yet it stands as powerful evidence of unbroken cultural continuities. A scene from 1895 shows a young woman of Taos Pueblo in present-day New Mexico. Between adobe walls, we see signs of daily tasks combined with the long, rich history of the PBLO, inhabited for centuries by Kiowa-speaking peoples. This was a crossroads of trade routes in the upper Rio Grande Sense pre-colonial times, its iconic, multi-story houses reflecting a unique communal architecture. In an 1892 image, we observe a young Kiowa woman in an everyday moment alongside her community. Her garments, adorned with beads and textiles adopted in that period, indicate active exchanges with settlers and the Plains trade network. Her focused gaze and her adornments reveal the youthful roles and ritual practices that sustained Kiowa life at the end of the 19th century. In this image, we see a woman of the Spokane Nation, photographed in 1897 by Frank LaRoche. Her clothing and accessories reflect the distinct practices of the Columbia Plateau. This moment captures a period of intense change in the Pacific Northwest when railroads and new economies were asserting themselves. Yet community life steadfastly maintained its rituals, beadwork, and basketry. A photograph from 1904 in present day. New Mexico shows the Corn Maiden, a central mythic figure among the PBLO peoples. At the turn of the 20th century, this scene underscores the absolute centrality of corn as daily food, as a guide to the agricultural calendar, and as a sacred ritual offering. The image beautifully illuminates the deep ties between myths, labor, and community life in the Southwest. In 1900, Carl Everton Moon began an ambitious photographic project, visiting Native American communities in their homelands. He sought to preserve ways of life, rituals, landscapes, and histories at the very turn of the 20th century, when westward expansion and new frontiers were rapidly and irrevocably altering their daily lives. This is a woman of the Taos Pueblo people, photographed in the 1880s in the territory of New Mexico. We can observe her dark wool clothing, a shawl over her shoulders, beautiful turquoise necklaces, and traditional hairstyle. In the background, the adobe houses indicate the communal role of architecture. Her expression suggests a daily life deeply marked by rituals, trade, and agricultural seasonality. In the 1880s, Marcia Pascal stood out as a woman of Cherokee descent, daughter of George Pascal, an officer in the U.S. Army. Her personal trajectory crosses the post-Civil War phase when westward expansion, railroads, and new legal frontiers were dramatically altering life in the Indian Territory and in mixed-race communities. In 1894, a Kiowa woman from the Southern Plains lives in what was then the Indian Territory, today Oklahoma. After the Plains Wars and the imposition of boundaries, her community faced severe economic and spiritual changes that strained the ceremonies, language, and family roles previously reinforced by strong regional alliances. From the year 1900 in the United States, a young indigenous woman appears in the full ceremonial dress of her nation. This scene is set at that pivotal turn of the century when Native communities faced tremendous territorial losses and redefinitions of their autonomy. In the face of rapid transformations, her clothing and adornments proudly affirm collective bonds and cultural continuity. A photograph from 1899 made by Frank Reinhardt presents Hattie Tom, an Apache woman. The scene is set at the end of the 19th century, a phase of dramatic reconfiguration of the American West and of the fierce assertion of indigenous identities under new civil powers. The careful framing and her adornments indicate deep cultural choices and ways of presenting oneself to the world. Elsie Vance Chestwin, connected to the Chiricahua, is inserted into the Apache history of the Southwest at the end of the 19th century. Amid relentless military campaigns and displacement, the clans struggled to preserve kinship, alliances, and subsistence routes. Her name itself evokes memories of imprisonment, removals, and contact with army posts on the U.S.-Mexico border. In Kiowa, an image from 1886, Lizzie Long Wolf performs in Buffalo Bill's show, part of the famous Wild West tours that profoundly shaped the public's memory of the frontier. Her participation shows how these shows brought together equestrian demonstrations, exhibition shooting, and choreographies to sell the public a specific and often simplified narrative of the West. Made in 1895, this image presents a young Hopi, woman of the PBLO people who live on the mesas of Arizona. Her clothing and adornments indicate her family belonging and stage of life. At the end of the 19th century, contacts with railroads, merchants, and scholars were growing, while the vital seasonal ceremonies continued to mark the community calendar. In 1899, Frank Reinhardt photographed Hattie Tom, a Chiricahua Apache woman. The image, made in the context of growing ethnographic interest, allows one to observe her adornments, hairstyle, and textiles that reveal the group's sophisticated techniques and identities. Her serene posture echoes memories of displacement and alliances formed after the grueling Apache Wars. The 1886 image shows Isabel Perico Njadi, a Chiricahua Apache woman held as a prisoner of war. The setting starkly evokes the end of the campaigns in the U.S. Southwest, when the capture of Apache groups accompanied the surrender of Geronimo. Her presence underscores the brutal effects of military advance and territorial occupation on indigenous peoples. Dated around 1900, this image shows Alice, possibly connected to the Cayuse, Walla Walla, or Umatilla peoples of the Columbia Plateau. Her facial features, attire, and adornments suggest her cultural affiliation. This period was marked by treaties, displacement, and difficult territorial reconfigurations in the Pacific Northwest. Dated 1885, this image shows a young Comanche woman. Her hairstyle, the beads, and the textile indicate skilled craft practices and commercial contact in the southern Great Plains. The period followed the tragic decline of the bison and forced settlement in bounded territories, a context that dramatically altered mobility, clothing, and traditional modes of subsistence. Dated 1900, this image shows a young woman on her wedding day. The setting underscores the rites that joined families and clans in the villages of the Arizona Plateau. Her woven garments and shell and turquoise adornments express inherited crafts, while her hairstyle and the textiles offered mark her passage into adulthood and the enduring continuity of her community. In the 1886 image, Julie Nelson is glimpsed, dressed according to the strict social codes of the late 19th century. Her attire, hair arrangement, and posture reflect the expectations of respectability amid rapid urbanization and industrial expansion. Her look and pose suggest a clear sense of control and self-awareness before the camera of the period. In 1895, George A. Addison painted Amy and Carrie Kiowa, placing two figures on Kiowa Island off the coast of South Carolina. In the post-Reconstruction era, when barrier islands connected fishing and cotton economies, the scene highlights clothing, posture, and objects linking these local lives to the rhythms of the tides and coastal commerce. And finally, we reflect on the role of young Comanche women in the 1880s, who stood out as central agents of collective life. They were responsible for preparing food, setting up and leading camps, working leather, and managing complex exchanges. They were the ones who sustained mobile economic networks tied to buffalo hunting and regional trade. They were the vital transmitters of languages, songs, and rituals, articulating kinship and alliances. Their unwavering actions were what shaped cultural continuities in a period of breathtakingly rapid change on the plains. What an incredible collection of stories and faces from a defining era in American history. Each one of these women has a story that resonates down to the present day. Now we'd love to hear from you. What in this collection did you find most fascinating? Was it the intricate details of their adornments, the stories of resilience, or perhaps a specific photograph that spoke to you? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history and want to join us for more journeys like this, please make sure to subscribe to History Comes Alive and hit the bell icon to get notified. Every time we post a new video, we're always exploring new topics. Tell us, what would you like to see on the channel next? More photographic journeys, profiles of specific historical figures, deep dives into particular events? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep history alive.